How's it going, guys? Welcome back to my F122 MyTeam Career. This is episode 3 and our third round of our first season in Formula 1. We are heading into the Australian Grand Prix as we set our, weekly schedule as we prepare to head down under to Albert's Park to take on round 3 of the Formula 1 season, like I was saying. This week, I think, is going to be a very important one as we follow up our midfield finish, but highly successful finish in Jeddah after following a disastrous round 1 in Bahrain, which we saw and covered extensively in the previous 2 episodes. But this week we are feeling pretty good as we've had a few minor upgrades come through, and as we continue to set our R&D, we are really trying to get the most out of this car while we can, and we are absolutely looking to improve in essentially almost every single area as we go through and check and see what we have available to us. And we definitely know that aerodynamics are going to be important, and so getting some of that aero invested early is definitely going to come back and only help us in the future. Unfortunately, with such a disappointing round 1 and a midfield finish in round 2, we don't have a lot of research and development points to play around with, but we're just kind of keeping an eye on what we have available to us and where we currently sit towards the bottom on the R&D chart, but we're trying to make up for lost time, and that is for sure. So as we advance through now, we get a bit of some funding, which is fantastic, and as we head into
sooner or later you'll probably be asked by the media who you consider to be your rival.
A little bit of extra
Think
cash
carefully,
and a little bit of extra
as while you will receive a claim for beating them,
Let's go ahead and
you'll
get
lose
that
a
started.
claim if you fail to do so.
As we get our Pirelli hot lap started, I want to talk about our goals for this weekend as we look to continue to move up the board on our finishes. I think we've learned a lot so far in the first couple of rounds, and we're hoping to kind of put it all together here in Australia to hopefully get an even better finish than we did in Jeddah. Not necessarily, expecting points, but I definitely feel like Australia is an opportunity to really come out and show what we're capable of as we run a little wide into this last corner. But it looks like we're hopefully going to do enough. We do finish up with a gold, getting a $100,000 bonus as well as 1,000 acclaim. That will definitely go a long way as we head into our practice sessions. I went ahead and skipped forward to practice session 3 to kind of continue talking about our goals for the weekend. I think our main goal is hopefully to get through this race without any major damage for, I feel like, the first time. That has definitely been a sticking point so far for us. Coming home with no damage has definitely been a bit of a problem. Not for our teammate, as Fittipaldi has managed to keep it fairly clean, although a little disappointing and down the order. But for us, they definitely want to really continue to show that we've continued to learn as we head into qualifying here, that what it takes to get around a lap nice and clean, not making any unnecessary moves, not making any unnecessary mistakes. As we head into this qualifying lap, a little hesitant coming around the first corner, we see ourselves already dropped all the way down into P21 on this rolling one-shot qualifier as we're following Charles Leclerc around Albert's Park. But that said, we definitely will look to improve as this lap continues, and as well as this calendar season continues, hoping to make up some ground as we see a bit of a jump there coming through this midpoint of this lap. And we're hoping that, obviously qualifying is very important for not only the race weekend, but we're hoping that starting a little bit further up will help keep us from getting held up in the mid-pack quite as much, as we currently sit in P12, moving up into P10 briefly as we run a little wide on this fast right-hander, and that's definitely not going to do us any favors. Hopefully we can make a bit of a comeback here coming down the last few corners, and getting ourselves a decent starting position for race day. I think going forward, I think I might want to move off this one-shot qualifying version. I think I gave it a try, and I don't think it was quite my favorite. but we will make that decision later as we come home and cross the finish line, coming home eventually to land in P11. So we are right there
streets, making for a bumpy
as we head
with
for race weekend and race
there are 14
day.
corners around the lake, with the best passing opportunities coming at turn 1 and turn 3. Off the back of a fantastic qualifying session, it's time to see how our starting grid looks like for today's race. Charles Leclerc lines up on pole position, and a very happy Carlos Sainz will start second. As we continue through the rest of the grid today, we have Verstappen, Perez, and Sir Lewis Hamilton, and Russell, Bottas, Fernando Alonso, Ocon, and Lando Norris. The rookie, Magnussen, Pierre Gasly, and Tsunoda, Vettel, Ricciardo, Guan Yu Zhou, and Lance Stroll, Mick Schumacher, Albon, Fittipaldi, and Nicholas Latifi. With preparations almost complete, let's head down to the track.
So as the formation lap gets underway, it's time to get focused on what we are here to do as we line up in P11 to start. You know, this is a moment to really start to focus in on all of the small things that we're trying to accomplish this weekend. As I mentioned earlier, we're trying to, minimize damage. We're trying to minimize big mistakes that really cost us positions. We're trying to learn who to fight and when to fight them, as well as not letting others dictate our race. We really want to use this as an opportunity to focus on our race and who we are personally racing, not necessarily getting bogged down with racing people who, are in a completely different level of race than we currently are. We're not fighting with any Max Verstappens or Charles Leclercs, as those guys are in a completely different league than us currently. But as we get set up here on the grid, it looks like Fittipaldi actually ends up on the back row. Hopefully he'll be able to make something happen. We move forward as the lights are going on. We prepare for hopefully getting a good start, and we are underway in Alberts Park. We actually get a pretty decent start here with Lando Norris here on our right. Just get a little bit more of that straight line speed. We actually send one a little bit around the outside, kind of getting pushed off a little bit to the inside, but we hold our own, moving up one position into P10, and we continue on our way, hoping to utilize any opportunities like this to make a huge dive down the inside and actually make up 2 more positions, getting past a 7-time world champion and Lewis Hamilton. Maybe a bit track limiting, but at the same time, with nothing coming down from the FIA, hopefully making up multiple positions on that major move is definitely going to help us out moving forward, as we now find ourselves behind Fernando Alonso in that Alpine, with Lewis Hamilton right on our coattails, to say the least. It'll be an interesting fight with the 7-time world champion right behind us in that Mercedes, but nonetheless, we're going to do our best. Actually, as we move forward here, a handful of laps, we've actually managed to hold off Hamilton quite a bit and actually managed to put a bit of a gap, not a big gap, but a bit of a gap as it hovers around, between 0.4 and 0.5 of a second. We actually managed to make it through a few laps with no major issues and no major mistakes, as we find ourselves continuing to run in P8 as we continue to move up on Fernando Alonso and Valtteri Bottas in that Alfa Romeo up ahead of the Alpine. But this has been a huge opening, few laps of the race for us, as we like I was saying, our main goal is, to learn to run our race, not get too overexcited, as we actually made a bit of a run here at Fernando Alonso in DRS, but unfortunately we were definitely not going to make it into that corner ahead, so we just wisely decide to back out instead of making a big lunge, as we kind of cut off Hamilton, actually give Fernando a bit of a lunge and a bit of a bump draft as we move over to defend against Hamilton, trying to make a dive around the outside to get past, so we actually successfully and aggressively defend against Lewis Hamilton in this one, as we kind of move to the side to try and break the toe of Hamilton down this opening straight. We continue into turn 1s and 2, continuing to run in P8 as we are starting our 5th lap in this one. No major events to really talk about in the rest of the race, as you know, P6 through 10 really hasn't changed. A bit of a gap has opened up from Hamilton to Esteban Ocon down in P10, but other than that, this has been a fairly clean race run by everyone around us. As once again we move up another lap, we see another opportunity to maybe make a bit of a run on Fernando Alonso. We are continuing to be patient and really trying to pick our spots as we head down the pit straight once again. DRS opening. Hamilton, you know, a solid 4/10 behind, will make a bit of a run, but I don't think he'll have quite the pace to really make a move on us, as we see Valtteri Bottas lock up a little bit, and Fernando Alonso and I able to sneak through, as well as Lewis Hamilton, as we actually wisely, and like we were saying, taking advantage of others' mistake instead of being the one to make the mistake ourselves. We move up and attack one position as Valtteri Bottas finally makes a mistake when Fernando Alonso tries to send it down the inside into turn one, and now we find ourselves up one more spot, currently running in the points 7 laps into a Grand Prix for the first time of our young career, as we maybe get a little bold here as we try and eye up Fernando Alonso, potentially looking at this next DRS zone coming up in just a few short corners. If we can get a good run, we may be able to, given the opportunity, move up one more position up into P6. So this is a very exciting moment, but we have to remind ourselves to be smart as we get a great run as we take the lunge to the outside, but unfortunately it's just a bit much as we're late on the brakes. We actually get a warning with our collision with Fernando Alonso. Might have been a bit riskier than necessary, but nonetheless, we move up into P6. Now, we have a couple of world champions directly behind us, and we need to remind ourselves that, you know, not every fight is going to be worth fighting, but as we build a bit of a gap to Fernando Alonso, we're hoping that Lewis Hamilton will be able to move up a little bit on Alonso, and maybe by attacking Alonso, it'll hold Alonso up enough for us to kind of build a bit of a buffer to the 2-time world champion. We just gave a little bit of an aggressive bump draft, as we'll put it, but with George Russell 3.5 seconds ahead of us, we really need to cut into it as we move forward a little bit. That gap to Russell still a solid 3 seconds, as well as we see Leclerc pitting for the first time, coming out of the pits actually, and we get our opportunity to fight a Ferrari for the first time up in the top 10 for a position. Him coming out of the pits on these cold hards. This is a unique opportunity that, you know, we're not fighting for the Ferrari in this race, but at the same time, those cold tires are going to take a long time to heat up, and so we're trying to find an opportunity to potentially, you know, not let Alonso get an opportunity to get, you know, to catch up. As we're seeing here, as the gap to him is under half a second. We really need to get by Leclerc here on those cold hard tires, but that Ferrari machine is just too much for us in a straight line, and that gap to Alonso is becoming ever closer and closer as he is right on our rear wing. But Leclerc doing his job to hold us up just enough, but also that Ferrari underneath him is definitely doing enough to keep us at bay in the straights. As we get a little bit of DRS heading down this back straight, we won't be, as he locks up a little bit and runs wide, we decide to take one big lunge down the inside, trying to capitalize on that mistake, and we actually do manage to get through Leclerc after he locks up on the outside on those cold hard tires, and we actually get an opportunity up into P4 for the first time, as we see Sebastian Vettel out of this session, and we currently running in the top 4 for quite a bit. That those hard tires really slowing down the lead group, but as we can tell from, you know, the leaderboard here on the left, we are amongst the group at the top who have yet to pit, still running, you know, 11 laps deep on these mediums. We know that Ferraris are technically going to be leading this race after, you know, we finally make our pit stops, but we're running in a bit of clean air here with about, you know, a 3.5 second on either end of ourselves. So with Vettel going out, that is unfortunate for the former world champion himself, but we're still, you know, at this point focusing as a safety car comes out. Oh no, that is going to absolutely put a damper as Esteban Ocon officially is retiring we finally get a chance to pit as we were approaching our pit window, but at the same time, that 3.5-second gap on either side of ourselves that, really would have given us an opportunity to continue to fight for good position in the top 10, with all the cars bunching up and us going to pit here for our hard tires really just puts a damper on us, as running in a bit of clean air might have been the best thing that could have happened for us with our propensity for front wing damage that we've seen in the first couple of rounds. But regardless, pitting was going to be a thing that was going to have to happen eventually. We weren't just going to be able to run in the top 5 forever on these mediums, as we get an optimal turn in on this pit stop and a bit of a slow exit, unfortunately, as we have to wait on Fernando Alonso. So once again, we find ourselves behind Alonso coming out of the pit behind the safety car queue. But luckily, we do find ourselves still in P7. So all in all, not a bad safety car situation for us. Getting that free pit stop definitely, I think, saved us a handful of positions. So at this point, as we approach the midway point of the race, running in P7 will take it every time. As we move forward to the end of the safety car period, as we get started, we have to remind ourselves of what our goals were for this race. As we near the midway point of this race, we're really just trying to stay within ourselves, especially as this safety car goes in. We're really trying, 1, no damage, and 2, not taking any unnecessary risks, but definitely attempting to capitalize on mistakes made by the AI, as we still are struggling to warm up these new hard tires that just take so long to warm up, as we try our best to get a little bit of heat in them for this restart. As we're coming down to these last few corners, we find ourselves once again behind Fernando Alonso, with Sergio Perez and George Russell ahead of him. And once again, the 7-time world champion Lewis Hamilton finds himself looking at the back of our big and clunky car, as we actually get a really terrible jump on the safety car restart. But we make our way down into turn 1. We know it'll be a bit of a slower turn in, since everyone is really bunched up. Doesn't look like any big moves are made, and luckily it looks like we are going to make our way again safely and positively jubilant at the fact that at the midpoint through this race, we are currently running in the top 10 and currently looking at potentially our first points of the season if we don't make any major mistakes. The real question at this point is, are we fighting Fernando Alonso in front of us? That really is the big question, as we do run a bit long into that corner and get a bit of a slow turn out, as Hamilton is looking to come in and make a move on us, as he's not but a 1/10 of a second behind us. We do manage to hold off on him a little bit, as he does make a bit of a look-see right on our rear wing, and he decides, probably wisely with this DRS zone coming up, to back off slightly, as we do not get DRS because of the safety car restart, thankfully. And for some reason, it looks like Lewis Hamilton actually backs off a little bit coming out of that final straight. I wonder if he's running with any damage, because I really feel like that Mercedes should not be that slow, especially to us coming out of a straight line, that is for sure. But as we come down this pit straight again, we managed to hold our position, not make any major mistakes to lose a position, even though we do run wide and take a couple of corners pretty poorly. But as we move forward a few laps, once again, still just kind of continuing on, we see Lewis Hamilton actually finally make his move down the inside of us, and we, at this point, we just need to, really just let him go. We're not fighting Lewis Hamilton here, as, we don't need to take any unnecessary risks, as I've been saying. But that definitely doesn't mean we can't take an opportunity if it does present itself. But we're not fighting Lewis Hamilton in this race. At this point, we're fighting for points as we near 12 laps remaining. We do find ourselves in front of Valtteri Bottas and Lando Norris, who's currently running in P10. Fernando Alonso still running up in P6, and Lewis Hamilton obviously taking our position in P7. But as we continue to move forward, this is still going to be our race to lose points on. I think it's going to be very, fingers crossed, knocking on some wood wherever you are, going to be an opportune time to finally get our first points of our young F1 career, and the first points for our team in the Constructors' Championship in our first season as a member of the Formula One grid. We open up a very important 1-second gap to Valtteri Bottas behind us, and he will not get DRS as we move forward once again. Unfortunately, that gap was short-lived as Bottas finds himself directly on our rear wing as we begin our last 10 laps. Bottas is going to finally start to make some of his moves to try and get around us, and he ends up going for the inside, and we sort of just kind of go side by side. He's a little slow coming off the curb, and we actually managed to hold the position. That was one of those moments where we really needed to decide, are we going to be fighting Valtteri Bottas that hard? The Alfa Romeo once again kind of having a look. We give him some space just in case he decides he wants to go for it, but he's really looking for those openings on us, as we definitely are trying to be wary of our tire wear and our subpar car that we're attempting to get around these last 10 laps. We're running a bit wide through that corner. We really need to tighten that up by the end of the race if we want to keep this top 10 finish possible, as Valtteri Bottas once again makes the move down the inside. We're going to keep on the gas, try and cut him off, as we do have the inside line moving forward, and he wisely and potentially still trying to go around the outside will eventually back off, running into this fast right-hander. He knows DRS is coming, and without being able to get cleanly in front, knows it's probably a better idea to back off, get DRS, and attempt to keep the momentum going as we move into this sharp right-hander. And we once again defend against Valtteri Bottas, who's coming back at us ever slowly. This has been a great defensive battle for me, getting some experience in battling and defending against a much more experienced driver and a much better car, as he finds himself a quarter of a second behind us. We are attempting to break the toe on Valtteri Bottas, who seems to get a bit of a run. It looks like he's going to go down the inside, and we gave him room as we take the inside line again, and he's forced just, back out of the corner and, get back on the racing line. That's going to, benefit him even more, as he once again continues to just take those looks. We leave him room just in case, because, we don't need any spin outs. We don't need any contact here because, like I was saying, we're trying to fight our best, but at the same time, this is a fantastic opportunity for points, and this is a fantastic development as Lando Norris actually battles through Bottas and really opens up almost a full second gap to us, with Valtteri, maybe a little bit frustrated having to fight us. He finds Norris just on his back wing as well, and actually gets overtaken as Lando Norris ends up moving up into P9, and actually is very quickly making up the time between myself and him as we get closer and closer to our final few laps here. We're under 7 laps remaining, and Lando Norris is on the hunt as he smells even more points on this young fledgling team that continues to be a bit of a thorn in a lot of these more established drivers and more established teams' side. As we move forward, again, 6 laps remaining, we're keeping an eye on our tire wear, and this is where we really have to start thinking strategy even more so, as there's a bit of a group bunching up behind us. We really need to start worrying about making sure that our tires can make it to the end. I think it was somewhere in the range of about 20% on the rears worn, with 6 laps remaining. That will definitely start to impact us as we get closer, as we think ahead further and further to the finish of this race. We really need to make sure we have enough tires to finish where we want, as once again we move forward to lap 26. Valtteri Bottas once again overtaking Lando Norris. I wonder if Norris had any damage, moving back one more position back into P10, but Valtteri Bottas has definitely not forgotten what we did to him more than less than 10 laps ago, and he wants this position badly, as he makes a huge run down the inside, takes a peek but doesn't make the move as they move into this fast left-hander. He definitely is keeping us within striking distances. Once again, we can see that our tire wear is really starting to creep up there, and this, I think, is where our ultimate decision needs to be made of, if Bottas gets a good run on us, are we going to defend as hard as we would if we were really trying to keep this position? We've fought hard previously, and it's come back to bite us as we move forward again. As we near our last lap of the race, we know that Bottas has given some looks down this opening straight, and with the last lap of this Grand Prix looming, will he finally make the move that he's been eyeing ever so much coming down the inside. He actually does make the move, and at this point we let him go. We give him a bit of a bump as he kind of moves over into us, and it was at that point, with 1 lap remaining and a full 1 second gap to Lando Norris behind us, we decide this isn't worth it. Our tire wear is nearing pretty critical levels here. Bottas has a much faster car, and at this point we are eyeing our first points of our career, and we decide it's not worth the fight. We are going to settle in here behind Valtteri Bottas as we come down and finish our final lap. The gap to Norris growing ever steadily, a full 1.5 seconds back. We are eyeing that, especially also that 4.5 second gap to Gasly, currently running in P11, as we hold position and actually cross the line to finish for the first time P9 in the points. That's right, our first points in Formula One come in Albert's Park. We nabbed 2 very important points as Yuki Tsunoda gets the driver of the day here in this one. You know, I really feel like that should have been me, but nonetheless, we finished the weekend in the points for the first time as Max Verstappen actually wins the Australian Grand Prix. We, though, are celebrating in the paddock absolutely as if it was a podium, because we finished for the first time in the top 10. We get our points and we will go home extremely happy as we look and actually see it's a Ferrari 2-3 and a Max Verstappen win in Australia. Congratulations to them. They, as I was saying, when we were fighting them there towards the midpoint of the race, it's fun to be able to fight them briefly, but they are running a much different race than us. But all in all, this was a fantastic finish for us as we, for the first time, finish a race in the top 10. We run a fairly clean race, minus a few aggressive bump drafts as we look at the final positions here. We beat both McLarens, both AlphaTauris, both Haas, and we find ourselves with a fantastic position moving forward. With our 2 points to our name now, we are officially on the board in the World Drivers' Championship as well as the Constructors' Championship. What a day, what a weekend. And so that will wrap up this episode of my F1 22 My Team Career. We will see you next time for episode 4